Hey, Dr. Robertson, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about menu pricing.
Menu pricing.
Exciting stuff. Hey, hold it down in there, buddy. All right. First thing, this chapter, I got a lot of feelings about this chapter, guys. One, I feel this chapter overcomplicates the approach to pricing. I'll go ahead, but it gives you too many options, and it's like the author's like, well, we need to stretch this chapter out. Let's put some weird things in there that nobody uses.
And honestly, it's just one of those things where you kind of keep it simple. You know, whatever works for you is going to be your best method.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of different methods here. I'll talk about a couple of them. Some of them I may kind of skip. So there are a lot of different methods for calculating menu prices. There is no single best method because all of them kind of, there are upsides and downsides to all of them. And what you're looking to do is you're looking to maximize your profit in your restaurant. That's when you price for most pricing considerations, that's what you're trying to do, is whatever is going to give you the best, most profitable outcome is the right selection. So it's not that the contribution margin is better or the price percentage method is better. The method that works for your restaurant is the correct one. And so we'll talk about some different ideas and some different approaches and kind of why you do things. But yeah, like Matt said, keep it simple. So one other thing that you want to keep in mind is that our prices on a menu should fall in a pretty narrow range. So this is why no single pricing method works best. If I have a menu and I have chicken on it, and I also have Kobe beef, let's say. You know, I'm a high-end restaurant. I have both Kobe beef and chicken. The Kobe beef, there is no way that the price range for those two entrees, if I actually base it on the cost, is going to be, they're not going to be anything alike. And it's for a guest to go into a restaurant and I have one entree that is $40 and one entree that's $200, that doesn't work. We tend to have things within price ranges. So, you know, things will be 40, you know, every item on the menu will fall, say, between $40 and $55. So we tend to group our prices that way. And it's important psychologically to do that. If you don't, what you'll end up with is that super expensive item or that super inexpensive item, they won't be bought.
Yeah, because people will have a perception of that super inexpensive item. Let's say your rest of your menu is like 40 to 50, and then you have a $10 item.
Yeah.
If you're the one who goes there for like a business meeting, even though it might be a very tasty $10 item, if you order it, you might get judged too. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues there.
And also think about a menu like for an appetizer. If you go in there on the appetizer, we have, let's say we have chicken wings and we have breadsticks.
Oh, I'm sold.
Chicken wings, you know, it's going to be less, you know, we have a small an appetizer portion, it's $7. Well, breadsticks, you know, an order of breadsticks has 15 cents worth of flour in it. And so the realistic price for your breadstick should be like $1. So you have $1 appetizer item and a $7 appetizer item. Yeah. It does, what we do is we adjust the prices so that they fall more within a range. So the breadsticks become like $4.50 and maybe the chicken wings become $6.50 or something like that. So it falls within a narrower range.
Yeah.
And if we have to, we adjust the recipe, you know, to kind of get things where they should be. So the most common method, or the one that I talk about the most, is just a straight up food cost percentage method, which is I have a sale price and I price my item, I create the sale price depending on how much the food costs me. And so the food costs X amount, I sell, everything is done at based on a percentage of that, whatever, my food cost is a percentage, and everything is priced so that all the items come in with this desired food cost percentage. So,
Sense to me.
yeah. So let's say that I have an item. Let's say that I have a hamburger, and my food cost on it is $3.22. My food cost percentage that I'm aiming at in my restaurant is 31%. So the hamburger cost me $3.22 to make. That's my cost in the restaurant. I want to have a food cost percentage of 31%. So the question is, how much should I charge? What should my menu price be? Well, my price should be the food cost, which is $3.22, divided by the 31%, and that will give me a recommended price, which in this case is $10.39.
Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to go ahead and just put down $10.39 on the menu. You're going to look at your
Probably not.
items, right?
Right.
Like if all your items are under $10, you're probably going to go with like $9.95, which is a 32% food cost.
Right.
Because psychologically, once you break that extra digit, it can influences people's decisions.
Right. That leap over $10, some people go, whoa, that's more than I wanted to spend. I didn't want to spend $10 for lunch for that hamburger. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the $9.75 chicken sandwich, because that's under $10. And so, like I said, the correct pricing model is the one that works for your restaurant.
Exactly.
So here we have an example. If I'm aiming for a food cost of 28.5%, and this dish, this chicken sandwich, cost me $3.04, what should my sale price be? What should I charge for this? What should I charge for this item on the menu?
Well, the recommended selling price, just based off of this, we would get it by going $3.04 divided by 0.285, because 0.285 is 28.5%.
And we come up with $10.67. So that's our suggested price for the menu.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put down 1067 regardless of that. I would make it a nice number like 75 or 50, depending on how things are standard on the rest of the menu. And
I would say, in my personal experience, 90% of all menu pricing is done this way. It's done on a food cost percentage. 90%. And I'll talk about some of the other methods and when they might be appropriate.
Oh, beverages.
All right. So another example, the beverage cost, I'm aiming for 18.5%. And that's the thing, is our beverage cost tends to be lower than our food cost. We tend to make more money on beverages. So when you're costing your bar menu, keep that in mind. We tend to we price it so we make more money off of alcohol. So if a bottle of beer costs 89 cents, that's a cheap bottle of beer. Okay. So,
we're talking about wholesale here, so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, sure. So I take the beverage cost 89 cents. I divide it by the percentage.
We're buying Schlitz, yes. So.
And I come up with $4.81 for my, double deuce of Bud Light here.
Mad Dog 2020.
And
I'd probably go with $5.
Yeah, $4.99, something like that, or $5.
I know I mentioned in the previous slide like $10.75 or something, but a lot of places they're just going with straight up like $11, $10.
At the end of this set of slides, I have kind of a slide that deals with the psychological expectations of pricing, about how you do you do it in a whole number, do you round it, or
that's all right.
Let's say that I have a beverage cost, what I want to aim for, of 20%, and I have a bottle of wine that costs $6.25 to purchase. So how much should I sell that bottle for?
Well, and I believe we talked about this last week, Dr. Robertson, that you want to typically price the bottle of wine so that way one portion is the cost of the bottle.
Correct.
Is what this is because you get about 5 pours out of a bottle, so 20% is a pretty standard thing here.
So, and Dr. Mosley is correct, that at 20% for a bottle of wine, that means that if I pour one glass of wine out, if I'm doing this by the glass, that the cost of that bottle is covered. So just, again, good management practice.
Yeah, so, 625 divided by 0.2.
Which means the bottle cost is $31.25. Okay, sometimes figuring out what the appropriate food cost percentage is hard. In class, I usually throw around the number of 30 to 33% because there is nothing magic about that number. It is just that is kind of industry range of where things are correct. I have worked in restaurants where my target was in the 20s. And there are also restaurants where the food cost can be in the 40s. And I have worked in clubs, like country clubs, where the food cost was actually over 100%. Now, and you have to keep in mind that a country club is owned by the members. And so if they want something, they get it. And even, they're paying for the meals when they come in, but it's also subsidized by their membership dues. So there was one particular meal that a guest wanted where they wanted white asparagus that was out of season, and we had to fly it in from France. And so it was literally in the range of $100 a pound for asparagus.
That's just crazy talk to me. I don't know about you, but.
Not a big asparagus fan?
No, but I mean, again, that's a unique situation. And also the food cost, they want to shoot for something, but certain items, if you cost them at a certain rate, are just going to end up pricing themselves out of the thing.
Yeah, so we have to adjust it a little.
Yeah, they're going to be items that you need on your menu, and they still might make more money for you, even though the food cost is higher. So
yeah, I don't know if anyone in the class ever noticed this, but when you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, the way they price their wings is always changing. Sometimes it's a large, medium, and small portion. Sometimes it's 8 wings, 12 wings, 20 wings. Sometimes it's 6 wings, 10 wings, 15 wings. It's because they're constantly having to adjust how they're pricing to hit sort of that psychological point on the menu as the cost of chicken goes up and down.
Yeah.
So another method, and this is the second most common method, is what's called a contribution method. And so here we're going to use an overhead contribution margin, where what we're going to do is we're going to look historically at how much it costs to operate the business, and we're going to come up with a target of how much money we want to make. And then with that target, we're going to work backwards and figure out our menu prices. So the costs are, we have food and beverage costs, we have overhead costs to operate the business, and we have profit. And so we'll look at these numbers, and the contribution margin is the total of the sales, or is the total of the overhead profit, total of the overhead and profit compared to the sales. Sorry, I cannot get that out.
It's all right. So, yeah, it makes complete sense to me. So you're looking at everything, and then you're going to figure out what next.
Yeah, so it costs me, I have to spend this much in rent and utilities to stay open.
Because rent isn't free. So if you don't account for how much you're spending on your water and your gas and the electricity and how much renting costs, because rent is expensive, especially for commercial properties, right?
Yeah, and I need the profit. I need to make $100,000 off of this to support my lifestyle. Otherwise, I can keep my existing job.
Yeah,
And so,
failure to plan is planning to fail.
yeah, so we take the overhead, we take our desired profit, and we compare that to our sales, and then the difference becomes the food cost percentage. So the contribution margin, the overhead cost, this is the cost that it takes to operate the restaurant, plus my amount of profit that I want to make. I'll divide that by how much I sell in the restaurant, how much my revenue is, and that'll give me a contribution margin. The food cost is 100% minus the contribution margin. So this is basically, I'm doing it backwards. What I'm doing here is I'm taking my cost of operate, how much money I want to make, and then I determine my food cost percentage once I know how much I want to make. So instead of saying, this is how much it costs to operate, anything above this I get to keep, I go and say, this is how much I want to make, and I work backwards. This is much less commonly used, but it's still occasionally used. So for instance, if my overhead is $850,000 to operate the restaurant, I bring in $1.4 million in sales, and I want to make $50,000 in doing this. Well, how much should I charge for a dish that costs $2.88? And let's look at these numbers for a second. So $850,000 in rent and utilities and payroll and all the things I'm paying. And I'm going to bring in $1.4 million. That sounds like a lot of money. And in the end, I'm going to make $50,000. You're going to bring in $1 million for revenue to make $50,000. Restaurant industry can be hard. So how much should I charge for this dish? Well, I'll take my overhead plus my profit, which is 850 plus 50,000, divide it by the $1.4 million in revenue, and I get 0.643. So this is my contribution margin.
Yeah.
So my food cost percent is 100% minus the contribution margin. So my food cost percent becomes 35.7%. Now, if my food cost percentage is 35.7%, and I know this dish costs $2.88 because that was given in the previous slide, I'll just divide that $2.88 by this food cost percentage, and I get a recommended or a suggested suggested price of $8.07. And then, I'd probably round that down to $7.99 or up to $8.25 or something like that. But so here's an example. I have a budget of $725,000. I am aiming for a profit of $125,000. I'm going to do $1.26 million in sales. What should I charge for my nachos, which cost $2.26 a portion?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah. So, formula: I take the overhead, $725,000 that it costs to operate. This is rent, utilities, salaries, whatever, plus my profit that I desire, $125,000. I divide it by my $1.26 million in revenue, and I get 67.5, which is my contribution margin. My food cost percentage is the difference between 100 and my contribution margin. So 100% minus 67.5%, 32.5% is my food cost percentage. If my nachos cost $2.26,
yeah,
I divide it by the 32%, I get $6.95. So I need to charge $6.95 for my nachos if I'm going to make $125,000.
Which, I mean, it all makes sense, but this is, like you said, it's a more complicated method typically than.
And it's kind of backwards.
Yeah. And this is good for sitting there and going, well, I want to make this much profit. Right. And, what will I need if and you can reverse engineer to figure out how much sales you want to make. If you know.
Right. How much should I want to make more money. What can I do?
Yeah. So, I mean, it has its uses, but it's just not commonly used.
Yeah.
So
this one, the Texas Restaurant Association method, I'll say this about it. I have never seen it nor used it. Matt, have you ever come across this?
no. You know, I know everything's bigger in Texas, but this is just not something that caught on. So I mean, everything, if it makes sense to you, great, more power to you, you know. And I'm all for people using whatever method makes sense to them. But when you're sitting there and you're changing the food cost percentage for each menu category, I can see some merits in there, right? Like your entrees, you want to have X percent. Your appetizers, you want this, you know.
I can also see if you're talking about a multi-unit chain where you're actually making strategic decisions about how you price your desserts, over a chain for marketing purposes or appetizers. But for a single unit operation, I have never seen it used. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, me either.
So I'm gonna, you know what? You guys can read about this. I am not going to put a lot of focus on this Texas Restaurant Association formula. Basically, the food cost percentage recommendation is 100% minus the overhead plus the profit, and and then you have different categories for each. So desserts are run at 12%. And if my overhead is 71%, then I can go through and figure out a price for this thing at 73%. But it's just an additional level of complication.
You know, and this is something where I know at the top of the presentation, I said that we should keep it simple. And part of that is that if you complicate it, each time the chances of you making a mistake and being off on your calculations is exponentially greater.
Right.
So
here we have the overhead is 71%. The profit that we're desiring for the dessert category is 12%. So that leaves us with 83%, which means that our food cost percentage is going to be the 100, the total minus this 83%. 70%, which means our food cost percentage on desserts is 17%.
Mm-hmm.
And if this dessert costs 73% and my food cost percentage is 17%, then what I should charge is $4.29.
Yeah, and again, that all goes down to like what your place is. So if you're charging $40 to $50 per a menu item, and you charge $4.50 for a dessert, it just doesn't make sense. But.
So here's another pricing method that doesn't get used much. The prime cost pricing method. What this is important for is if you're in a situation where you're using a huge amount of labor, or you have a huge variation in the amount of labor that's necessary for a dish. So in this, I would imagine you're working in a situation like a Japanese steakhouse with a teppanyaki table where they cook in front of you.
Hibachi.
Yeah. And so in that situation, the amount of labor is each cook is being pulled into this situation is taken out of, is basically taken out of the equation for an hour or two. And so in that situation, where the amount of labor can vary wildly, because if you think about a Japanese restaurant, they have a teppanyaki table, they have a sushi chef, and they have menu service.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of variability in how you would price those things because of the amount of labor that's involved.
Well, that brings to mind in a traditional setting in some fancier places where they make the Caesar salad tableside or the Anna's Foster and stuff like that. Not all desserts are going to be made tableside, so maybe for one or two things, you might want to consider the labor component.
And so if you have a situation where some cook, they're pulled out and they work on, they're kind of forced to just be working on one or two things. Sometimes this prime costing method can come into play. So the prime cost is the direct labor cost plus the food cost. So how much am I spending to pay someone to make this dish? How much am I spending for the ingredients to make this dish? And so what I have to think about is my sale price, what I should charge for it, is the amount of these prime costs, the labor plus the food cost, times whatever price factor, whatever multiplier I think is appropriate to make it worthwhile. So let's say that I have a price factor of 2.35 that just historically I've gone through, and that's what I've decided is appropriate to charge. My entree has $2.73 worth of food in it and a labor cost of 36 cents. Mm-hmm. Personally, if I am dealing with, let me take that back. 36 cents for each dish. Okay, that could be worth. That could, if you're serving enough of these dishes, that could be significant. Yeah. So the prime cost is the labor cost plus the food cost. So labor cost is 36 cents. Food cost is $2.73. It's $3.09. My price factor is whatever my prime cost is times 2.35.
So 2.35, for those that didn't catch, before we were using percentages for food costs and stuff to figure out the sales price. This is that we feel that we should be able to charge 2.3 times the amount of the prime cost to make it our selling.
Yeah, it's just a multiplier. Imagine in a very simple scenario, imagine if you said, well, for every dollar that I spend, for a hot dog in my hot dog cart, I'm going to charge $3. I'm going to charge 3 times as much. So if a hot dog costs me $1, I'm going to charge $3. Yes.
Yeah.
So what if the pricing factor is 2.8? Here we have food cost proportion of $3.64, a labor cost of 52 cents, and a pricing factor. So what do we do, Matt? What's first?
Well, first thing, you should probably add up the 2.
All right, so we'll add the 364 and the 52.
Yeah, right, and that'll get you 416. Yep, and then multiply by the 2.8.
Yep. So the 416, that's our prime cost. That is the labor cost plus the food cost. Mm-hmm. Times our pricing factor, which is 2.8. Mm-hmm. We get a menu price of $11.65. Yeah. Okay. So some challenges with the prime cost method. First thing is to keep in mind, your guest doesn't care. Your guest does not care how much labor you put into something. All they care about is what ends up on their plate and what comes out of their pocket. So keep that in mind if you're gonna, I will use the prime cost method because it accounts for my labor. That's awesome, but just keep in mind your guest doesn't care. All they want is what they perceive as a good value.
No, nobody wants to know how the sausage is made, nor do they care. They just want it to taste good.
Right.
So with this, they're not going to sit there and they're going to expect a certain level of labor and whatnot based on the type of place that you're at. They don't really want to know about all this other stuff.
You have to do this. Sometimes you're in a situation where, especially high labor situations like the teriyaki table where they cook, the Chinese food in front of you, where your employee is taken out of the game, and this is, they're just preparing this dish. And so their labor becomes a significant expense. And so this is for you to be able to kind of deal with that. Yeah. And then the price factor, this is management experience. It's like your first day on the job, you're not going to know what is an appropriate multiplier. It's going to take years of experience to kind of learn what the market will bear.
Yeah. And you're going to make mistakes, so it's all right.
Then we have this method called the actual pricing method. And here we're going to take percentages from a budget to create a price factor again. And here we're accounting for variable costs and fixed costs. So again, this is one of those pricing situations or pricing methods I've never actually seen used. I have never seen anyone take the variable cost plus fixed cost. Well, how much am I spending this month on hourly labor, and how much am I spending on rent, and then go through and calculate this? But it can be done. So your price divisor is the variable cost percentage plus the fixed cost percentage plus your profit. So how much variable cost could be things like labor, because it varies depending on how busy you are. Your fixed cost, one fixed cost could be salary, because the salary does not vary depending on how busy you are, plus your profit percentage. You subtract that from 100%, and whatever that percentage is that's left, that's your price divisor. And your sale price is going to be that prime cost, the cost of food and labor, divided by whatever that divisor is.
Yeah. So again, everything is based on what is right for your business.
I have never seen this method applied.
Well, because I mean, variable cost. I mean, when we're sitting there and we're just digging deep into all this stuff, I mean, you might as well just go with the Texas method at this point.
Well, if you're running a restaurant, Matt, how much time do you have to sit in the office and say, I wonder if my pricing would be more effective if I switched it over to the actual price method?
Oh, it gives me a headache just thinking about it, right? I don't know if I would want to take the time for that.
Yeah. So how this works, again, variable cost 21%, our fixed costs are at 33%. We're looking for a 5% profit. What should we charge for a dish that costs $3.18 and has labor of 83 cents? Well, the $3.18 food cost plus the labor of 83 cents, you add them together, you'll get your prime cost.
Yeah.
If we take our variable cost, our fixed cost, and our profit, add them together, and then subtract that from 100, we'll get our price divisor. So 21% variable, 33% fixed, 5% profit. We get 41%, or we get 59%. We subtract that from 100, we get 41%. Our prime cost is the labor cost plus the food cost, which comes out to $4.01. We take $4.01, we divide it by 41, we get $9.78.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the time for this, bless you, but most people do not have the time or just to sit there and to break everything down to this level is just, it's almost not worth it, to be honest. But
because in reality, if you're the kitchen manager and you're sitting in the office trying to do this, what's going to happen? Someone's going to cut their finger off in the kitchen. You got to run out there. You're going to find out somebody's out smoking pot on the loading dock. You're going to run out there. If you have, it's a great situation when you can sit and spend some time on the pricing, but we tend to go with simple solutions just because of time management issues.
Yeah, and sometimes just simple is better, it just. Yeah.
Okay, the gross profit method. So we do this for businesses with very low food costs. So imagine a chip shop, or when customers buy just one item per visit. So perhaps think of like one of the pretzel stands a pretzel stand. If you have a pretzel stand at an airport or something, people are going to come in, grab food cost, an item with a really low food cost, a pretzel, it's bread, and that's all they're going to get. So the gross profit is the money left from the sale after the food and beverage costs are deducted. And it covers everything. It'll cover our labor, our overhead, and our profit.
Yeah. So pretty much if the manager knows like how many customers it's going to get, on a given day, month, whatever, right? You can easily calculate from there what your per customer, gross profit per customer needed is. to cover how many people you'll have to have on staff. Your overhead is pretty much a fixed cost for the most part. And of course, your profits that you want to get.
Yeah.
So
here's how it works. We have our gross profit is our total sales minus our total food cost.
Yeah.
That'll give us our total profit, or gross profit. The gross profit for per customer is just we divide that gross profit by the number of customers.
Mm-hmm.
And then our suggested price is the
food cost.
The food cost. Thank you.
Yes.
Plus our gross profit per customer. So
yeah.
we calculate, what our profit per customer is. We add it to our food cost. Boom. There's our menu price.
Yeah.
Very simple. So here we have a coffee house, like a Starbucks or something. We're going to do 17,500 customers a month. Our food and beverage costs, all our costs every month, I know $29,500. I want to make $2,000 a month off of this coffee house, and it costs about 27 cents per portion.
Yeah. So the average monthly expense is excluding all food and beverage costs.
Yeah.
But the average, what's that?
Oh, so I was just going to say, what should I charge?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What should we charge? So we're going to take our 29,500 plus the 2,000, which is the overhead and the labor plus profit, right?
Yep.
And divide that by the 17,500, gives us $1.80. So that right there is our gross profit per customer.
Right.
So then we're going to take our beverage cost,
27 cents,
plus our gross profit per customer, and we are selling for much cheaper than any coffee shop ever would sell.
Yeah, because if just as a business owner looking at this, so I am going for a month, I'm going to serve 17,000 people, and I'm going to make $2,000. I'm going to make $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
That
honestly, like this right here, I would be looking at this cost and I'd be like, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, we're going to crank that up a little.
Yeah, I'm looking at $450, minimum. Not bad for some bean water.
Yeah, really.
Oh.
So here we have the beverage cost is 34 cents. We have 14,200 customers a month. Our overhead is $27,000. We make $2,800 in a month. What should I charge? Well, 27,000 plus 2,800 is
So we do the overhead and the labor expense plus profit. So the overhead and labor is the 27,000.
Right. Plus our profit.
Expecting to make is that divided by number of customers, gross profit per customer, 210.
Right.
So then we're going to take the 34 cents plus the 210. Again, 244. I'd be questioning why we're just making that.
Yeah.
So, but then we got the base price modeling, right?
Yeah, so here we work with a sales price and we work backwards and figure out what our food cost is per portion. And this works good if we have like a dollar menu, like where everything costs $1. So here we can work backwards and figure out what the food cost per portion is. Because like when you go through Taco Bell and you go to the dollar menu, not everything on that menu costs the same to make. So they're calculating this backwards. Or if you're in a non-commercial operation where you don't have, where your sale prices are set. So imagine like you're in a school cafeteria situation. There's a price that's paid for the food, but it is, I don't want to say it's unrelated to the cost of the food, but it's calculated for a different purpose. So the food cost equals the sale price times food cost percentage. So let's talk about, so those are different methods.
Mm-hmm.
How do I hit them? Like your boss, I'll tell you this, your boss is going to make you miserable to make your food cost whatever he thinks it's supposed to be. And so we have some tools we use. You're kind of limited, but there are a few things we can do to hit those costs. So if I need to lower my food costs, well, one thing I can do is I can make my portion smaller and charge the same price. So I can.
You got to be really careful with this. So a big mistake I tend to see people make is they start off with these giant portions because they don't quite understand how to cost out and price out their menu quite yet. And customers get used to something, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, everything's shrinking. So how do you shrink the portion without psychologically
feeling like you're taking something away?
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that I think Five Guys does a good job with, is when you go in there, if you've ever been in Five Guys, they give you a ridiculous portion of potatoes. And, why do they do that? Because potatoes are dirt cheap. They are literally giving you 10 cents worth of potato on your $10 hamburger meal.
And you're going to feel like you got a deal because all of a sudden you have more fries than anyone should be able to eat in a sitting. And that's a small portion.
Yeah. Okay, so hitting it, you can modify your portion size. You can reduce the amount of expensive ingredients in that you're serving. So again, going back to the Buffalo Wild Wings, what are boneless wings? Well, they're pieces of chicken breasts that are cut up. And why are they doing that? Well, because wings have become expensive and chicken breast has gotten cheaper. If you think about it, for each chicken, there are only 4 wing portions on a chicken. There are 2 drumettes, 2 flats. There's more chicken breast meat. So actually chicken breast prices, as wings have become more popular, it creates a surplus of chicken breasts. Breast prices go down. So, well, what do I do to hit the food costs I want if I'm Buffalo Wild Wings? As wing prices go up, I come up with alternatives like boneless wings.
Yeah, and what's funny about this is that it costs less, but they usually end up charging you a little bit more because the guest sees something as a little bit better value.
Yeah. And so these two tie together to reduce the quantity of expensive ingredients, or you go to less expensive ingredients. Those two kind of work together. And if you can't serve it profitably, you remove the dish from the menu. I mean, that's you just take it off the menu if it can't be done profitably.
Yeah, and I would recommend that you just completely reissue a whole new menu instead of whiting out an item, because that just draws attention to it.
And it's weird that, one of the things I've seen is in the last year, vanilla prices have skyrocketed. And so simple things on a menu like vanilla ice cream, it actually started, if you made it with vanilla beans, it became really expensive. So what do? Well, vanilla ice cream, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch up, and chocolate ice cream is going to become my default or something. There are a lot of things like that. Just as ingredients become expensive, we have to make choices.
Yeah.
Now I've got some special pricing situations, like a competitor. Now, this is, we don't operate in a vacuum. If I operate a restaurant and something similar opens across the street, well, I've got to compete with them, especially if it's like a concept that's really similar. Think about McDonald's and Burger King. They're selling hamburgers and french fries, and as such, you'll notice their pricing is always pretty competitive. They are always having to respond to what the other is doing. Because if one is suddenly much cheaper, if you're in a price-sensitive market, everyone's going to go to the cheaper option if they perceive your items as being similar.
Well, I mean, the dollar menu wars that went on for a long time, and they're finally getting out of it, but who knows what's going to happen right now.
And it's a challenge because you don't know what your competitors are paying or how they're pricing things, and you have to respond. It's a challenge, and if they drop their prices, you pretty much have to respond, or you have to come up with, another strategy to deal with it. So, like it says, it's best to pair it with another strategy. Yeah, so if my competitor order lowers their menu prices, I am kind of forced to do the same thing. But one of the things I want to do is that's probably when I start rolling out my value meals. So yeah, I can drop the price on my sandwich a little. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive you to buy the items that I make big profit on. I'm going to, hey, buy that fried apple pie, buy a soft drink, buy French fries with that sandwich. And I'll price it as a value meal. And so that'll push the check average back up. So you pair, when you are having to respond to competitor prices, it's always best not to just cut your prices, but to try and come up with an alternate strategy that's going to help you maintain your profitability.
Exactly.
So, when do we use which method? I'd say the food cost percentage method, it requires you to have a little bit of history, but it's the most common. The prime cost method I talked about, if we have a dish where there's a huge amount of labor, that's probably worthwhile. The gross profit method, where if we have very low food cost percentages, like the coffee shop example. Okay, so enough of that. Some other things that we need to think about just in pricing. If we are putting prices on the menu, we tend to adjust them before we put them on the menu. So I come up with the cost of a sandwich and it's $10.67. I'm not going to put $10.67 on the menu. It's going to be $10.95. And it has to do with how people perceive items, how we perceive value. That if I price something at 99 cents or 95 cents, it's perceived to be a value. If I end it at a 0.5 or a 0.5, it tends to be a luxury. And so maybe I have if I'm a higher end restaurant, I have a $25 hamburger rather than a $19.99, because I'm not trying to convince them that it's under $20 as a value. I'm saying, this is a premium hamburger, for instance. Sometimes, maybe we're in a market where we have a lot of price sensitivity. Is there a lot of ability for people to compare with my competitors, or is there a situation where a small change in the price will have a huge impact on my customers? That could affect how we price things. Perceived value. Sometimes I price things so that it is perceived as a good deal. Taco Bell was hugely successful with this. They created the value menu. And what they did was, we're going to lower our prices so we're seen as the cheap option. And what they got was they doubled their business. So even with lower prices, they were more profitable.
Well, and sometimes when you have these cheap menu items, it doesn't mean that if a family comes there, they're all going to order from the cheap menu, which
Right.
is what they're banking on, right? I never just ate one taco in my life. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, ending.
Yeah, it's just the whole psychology of everything. So if you go through any store, right, you're going to see that the prices are set deliberately. I mean, everybody knows that Walmart has your little codes for things that are on discount or clearance and all that stuff. And it's all based on the price. But you're going to sit there and you're going to be like, all right, if I go to a restaurant and they just have just straight up dollar, there's no cents on it, I know that they're at a certain level compared to one that's doing like $9.50.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the whole dollar here communicates the luxury. Like, all right.
Yeah. And we want to use prices that are familiar to the guests so they don't pay a lot of attention.
Well, yeah, exactly. You want them to just be like, it's not the droid they're looking for. They're just going to go ahead and buy it.
Yeah, it's like, why is this priced at $9.72? It's like, that's
Yeah.
You want them to not, of all the things on the menu you want them looking at, the price is the last thing you want them looking at.
Yeah.
And thinking about. Usually we round up to that price that they're comfortable with. So if something comes in at $10.72, we round it up to $10.99. But if there's like a slight drop in price. Like if the cost is $20 and a penny, well, rounding down to $19.99 is not a huge drop. And it may be one of those things where if we're under that $20 limit, psychologically people are going to order a lot more of them than if it was over $20. And bundling things together, such as burgers, fries, and a drink. The fries and the drink are very profitable. The burgers we tend to make less profit on. We bundle them together. If we get someone to buy all that, we make more money.
Well, and there's a pretty good example is before was Applebee's when they're still struggling, but dinner for two for 25 type things. You get two, you get an appetizer, you get 2 entrees, and you get dessert, right? Well, now all of a sudden you're getting them to spend $25 where they might have not even come there. They're seeing it as kind of a value as a whole package.
So, value pricing, so giving larger portions. This is one of those, especially of inexpensive things. Why do Mexican restaurants bring you so many chips? Because they're cheap.
Well, not just that, but it makes you thirsty.
And it fills you up.
Yeah, right. If I'm thirsty, I might be ordering another beer.
Know what your market's price ceiling is. In every market, there's a price. There's a limit on what you can charge for things, and just stay in that price range.
Yeah.
And also, you can when you price things that are low priced, it's fine to have the low price. It's fine to have that special that the guest can order that's low price, but especially if they also order a beer with it, which is a high profit item, or if a soft drink is actually a high profit item also. Yeah. So we can have those things that pair that are inexpensive if they also get a high profit item with it.
Yeah, sodas. It's a couple cents per glass.
Yeah,
it's just money coming into the bank.
Yeah. For the pre-fee menu, just read through and about calculating the pre-fee menu. The pre-fee is a price fix menu. And for here, basically, we just go through and we look at what we've done in, say, the previous month. We'll go calculate how much we spent on each customer for food, and then using that, we calculate what we should charge the guests.
Yeah, and this is where keeping, records about like for instance, next year we're not going to look back at April and March of 2020 and go, well, we should probably plan to have no customers.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have that historical data that you can go back and look at, it really helps out when you're doing stuff like this.
And pre-fee means price fixed. And so this is a situation where the customer, there are not multiple items on the menu they can order. It is like there's a set menu and this is what you get. Okay.
Buffets. Yes, the great American dining trough.
Yeah, so things about buffets. One, you don't have a lot of control over your portions with a buffet. We have a little bit. The size scoop you put out, the size spoon you put in there will have an effect. So you want to use the scoop that is going to be most profitable for you. So is it putting out a big scoop where they put 1 scoop on there, or is it putting out a small scoop where they get 4 scoops? You want to measure it and see which one actually, how do people respond to it? But because you don't have a lot of portion control.
Yeah, personally, I would probably put a bigger scoop on something that was really cheap and filling.
Yeah, the big giant scoop in the cottage cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, look at all those mashed potatoes.
Yeah. And also when you do a buffet, you want to be very careful in the management of it about portions and like when you're refilling it, and because there's this balance. You want it to look attractive and nice. It needs to look full, but also anything that doesn't get served on that buffet, well, that's potential loss. Mm-hmm. The customers, you made food that the customer didn't pay for. he didn't consume. Let's see. So after you run a buffet for a while, you can start calculating what your average food cost is. You have to have some historical data because there's huge variability. I'd say that a buffet restaurant, depending on what your menu is and depending on where you are, there's a lot of variability in how much people are going to eat.
Well, and this is where you look at time of day too. So lunch, traditionally, people have less time and they don't want to be super full when they go back to work because that food coma is not going to be helpful for their productivity.
And to calculate my food cost on buffet, I take the total food cost, how much I spent on ingredients to put the buffet out, and I divide it by the number of customers. That will give me an average food cost per customer, and then I can start coming up with my pricing.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Hey, it's been another fun one, Dr. Robertson. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your help.
Bye.